This podcast is made possible by First Call. Let's end the addiction crisis together. The first step to a future free from addiction is to make the first call.
Good morning, this is First Call. How may I help you?
Call 816-361-5900 or go to firstcallkc.org.
Hey everybody, it's Bill Brandmeier, and I'm here once again with our 10th episode of Answering the Call, and I'm here with my usual co-host, Emily Haig, the CEO of First Call. It's really good to be back with you.
Yeah,
you look so beautiful today.
It's Monday.
I love it. We're ready for a great week, and the 10th episode is actually, I think it's going to be my favorite, so I hope it is yours too. We're talking with Dawn Owens and Laura Bratt, and I have a history with Laura. I'm so excited that I get to see her again. She always lights up the room when I see her, and she has wisdom beyond. And the two of them have come together to create a program that First Call has adopted. You want to tell them a little bit about what the program is, and then we'll go right into
I would say we're just kind of creating some space for the program. It's been an awesome a partnership, I would say, yes. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we, first off, both these women are so powerful in advocating for what our community needs. And so when we first started in conversation, it really was, how can First Call help elevate GRASP and the voices and needs of families, like so many in the community. And so I think it's a cool opportunity to be able to give you all a little bit of platform to speak to what you're doing. I think there's a lot of ways, you know, that First Call meets the moment, and there's a lot of places that we're all still learning and growing, especially in the past 5 years. And so
that's perfect.
That's kind of where we are.
So at GRASP, it stands for Grief Recovery from Substance Passing. And after substance passing, and it's not a generic grief support group. It's tailored to meet the unique needs that come with losing someone to addiction, to overdose, to substances, and sometimes the loss is almost comes before the loss of life, right? I mean, the loss happens early in this process, so it's a unique situation. I want to go deeper into it, but let's first have you guys describe GRASP and how you came about to form that here for us in Kansas City, how lucky we are to have you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having us. The genesis is I lost my son Joshua on March 1st of 2020. I was living in New Haven. We all grew up here. My son grew up here. My family was here, and I had moved to New Haven. And I had moved. He passed 3 weeks after I moved, and then the pandemic hit. And I was by myself in New Haven with my support system here in Kansas City. And I knew after a few months I really needed to try to find a group of people who had lost their loved one to addiction. I knew that there was going to be a difference in being with those folks than somebody who lost somebody to any other situation. And I found a group called GRASP. It was, at that point, it was online because it was smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. And he passed in March. I went to my first group in May and was on the call, and it was wonderful, but it was still too raw. It was not something I could do. And so fast forward, I moved back to Kansas City in 2021 and just felt like it was time for me to try to find another group. And there was none here in the Kansas City area. I worked for Jewish Family Services for 10 years and was very aware of the impact that they make in the community on many different levels, particularly with their mental health facilities and their counseling program, and just felt like it would be a good place for us to land. And so worked with them, and they sponsored us. They had us in their offices for the first year and a half, or almost two, when we first started GRASP here in the area. And they were wonderful to work with, and it was a wonderful partnership at that point. But as more people were getting involved with what we were doing, I think Laura and I just realized coming to First Call was a better fit for those in the community who knew your services, who knew First Call services. And unfortunately, knowing that there was a percentage of the people who came to First Call, family members, those who were dealing with addiction themselves, who didn't make it.
Right.
And that needed the support of a group that for those of us who lost somebody who died because of addiction. And so Karen Gerson, who's a good friend of mine, who's also on the board, got us together. And
She's good at that, isn't she?
She's so good at that.
Karen Gershon, the connector. Love it. Shout out to Karen.
She made the so in Hebrew there's a word, it's shidduch. We made a match. Karen made a match for us.
Nice.
And we've been with First Call. It's almost now 2 years.
Yep.
I can't believe how long it's been. And it's been a wonderful match.
Laura, I'd like to give you a chance to share your experience. I also want to take a step back in just the general care of grief and how we've thought of grief for a long time, so we can position that against what actually is happening with GRASP. So, Laura, will you kind of tell us about how you walked into this and how it happened for you?
So Dawn had approached me when she moved back to the Kansas City area about starting this group, knowing my history. I grew up in addiction, and I married my husband, who was an alcoholic. And so it was my experiences through addiction have been different than hers, but loss is loss.
Sure.
So Dawn approached me, and I was initially really hesitant. Addiction is not typically something that we air to the world. We become very good at privacy and keeping secrets and holding on to this. So it took me a while. She worked on me really good. And I realized there was an incredible need and service that we could fill. And so she worked on me long enough and hard enough, and I thought, this is the right thing to do.
Did she use the Hebrew word shitka to
Not quite yet. Yeah.
But so that's neat. But you have a background in mental health.
I do. My background, I actually worked in the 80s on substance abuse units in hospitals in Miami, Florida, which was my first professional exposure to addiction. And it wasn't until that point that I realized my history. Mm-hmm. So a lot of us go into counseling and psychotherapy because we really need it. We just don't always need it till we walk in. But that was initially where I cut my teeth, so to speak, in the addiction field. And in my day life, I work as a neurotherapist and work with a lot of addiction. Addiction is way more rampant in our communities and our world than anyone is willing to really talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and grief and loss go hand in hand with
it's
it.
the stigma.
It's such a good point you made, and I'm excited to talk more about that too, but the grieving doesn't just happen. I mean, there's grieving all along the way. That's the conversation we're having in our walls. I'm excited to hear how you all think about that.
That's great. I want to first start with grief because I just want to set the baseline here. And I think about the grieving process. I have my mom's 87, my dad's 88. They're close to the end of their lives, right? And I'm already thinking about it, and so is the rest of my brothers and sisters. We're all thinking about what that would be like, what that's going to be like. And typically, you go through the stages of grief, and I anticipate that happening. I learned it in Psych 101, and talk about that for us, and then let's talk about this deeper feeling of what happens with losing someone to substance because of the guilt and the other things that happen. I'm not going to feel guilty when my parents die.
Right.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
I didn't hear or think or learn of the term anticipatory grief until I actually joined the GRASP group. And once I heard it, I thought, oh, that's what I've been dealing with for the last 10 years. My son suffered with addiction for 10 years, and so did we as his family. And every time that phone rang, or every time he walked in the door, you weren't sure what was going to happen, and you have that grief with you all the time and you kind of squash it down because it's not something that you want to admit to anybody that eventually, unfortunately, in most cases, I hope there are thousands and millions of people who don't have to go through what we went through, but there's a good chance that you're going to lose that person. And you don't want to admit it to anybody because that makes it sound like you've lost hope or you think that person's just going to go. But it's something, I think it's almost like a human, it's almost like a biological way of us dealing with it to a point, because if you don't have some type of idea in your head that it's going to happen, when it happens, I think you won't be able to get off the floor. So I think for me it helped to a point, because when I got the call, it was devastating anyway, but I always had it in the back of my mind that there's a really good chance it's going to happen. So I think if you don't have it, I think most people do have it who deal with somebody who's suffering.
It's tiring because your brain is on overdrive trying to figure out the solution. Like, how do I help this person? And it's so hard to live with that. And we could just leave it there. There's nothing else to say. But Laura, will you talk about grief just generically?
So I really appreciate your question because as a therapist in my day life, I deal with grief, and there's a lot of different kinds of grief. Everybody grieves. We grieve the loss of a pet. We grieve the loss of a job, of a lifestyle, and we grieve losses of people that we love. But when we grieve the loss of somebody that we love and lost them to addiction, it's a whole other layer. And it is not typically approached with the same receptivity and kindness as always as if you've lost a loved one to a heart attack or a stroke or cancer. It's a whole different kind of feel. There's a lot of alienation and loneliness that can go along with that. I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but the stigma with addiction is still alive and well. It's probably improving, but it's still present.
Yeah.
It
is. It's a sense. I live with it on my sleeve. I'm not afraid to tell people that I'm in recovery. Emily has parents that are in recovery. She's not afraid to tell people that she has that experience, that she grew up in that household. But I do think when people hear it, you still get the same kind of, oh, yeah, wow.
Do you think there are parallels? I know it seems like in my world, at least, this term of like stigmatized loss I've been hearing this more, not just about losing a loved one to their addiction, but also to suicide. And, there seems to be, I kind of feel like the more we talk about mental health sometimes and don't always simultaneously acknowledge that addiction is a mental health disorder, we're further stigmatizing addiction. So this is my soapbox, but it does feel like we're making some progress in likening, like we lose people we love to really difficult circumstances all the time. And we have very limited measures of power and control. Do you think that we're making progress in the conversation around these kind of quote unquote stigmatized losses?
I do.
Yeah.
I do think there's progress, absolutely. But as recently as within the last year, Dawn and I were visiting an acquaintance of ours who had a son that she lost to a health issue, a health crisis. And her son was in class with our oldest sons. And as we were sitting there in a group doing it's called a Shiva call for Jews, where you go and you do a visit kind of thing. And we're sitting in a small group discussing her loss, and she made a statement. Well, at least I didn't lose him to drugs or something. And
And I was sitting right there.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Ooch.
It was literally shocking. I mean, just retelling you the
Yeah.
story, I feel it.
Yeah. Dawn, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was intense.
I recently listened to a podcast with Brett Reed, which is Andy Reed's son, and Brett's gone through so much, and he introduced his brother to drugs, and his brother killed himself, and he has to live with that. But he was on a podcast called Hear the Whisper, or something about the whisper, and they're talking about the stigma, not being able to talk about this, and it was really powerful. But the point that I wanted to make was they're wrapping it around coaches and sports, and which is my passion and my love. These relationships that you have in your lives that can support you. Let's bring it back to GRASP and what that means. What an organization like GRASP is actually doing with this process, because the depths of losing someone, whether if you're a child and you lose a parent to addiction, you have a whole different set of issues of anger, even that you didn't have the parent you deserved, and the sense that you are still nothing you can do beyond your control, that you were born into this, or the losing a child who was your child. So let's go there.
I think Laura and I wanted to bring the group to Kansas City because we felt that people needed a place to grieve and to talk about their loved one. And if you're in a regular group of people, it doesn't happen very often. And so GRASP, we felt, and we wanted to be able to give people that space for us to hold them. And we've had people who've lost nieces, nephews, children, parents, sisters, brothers, just somebody who they loved. And the one thing at the end of each meeting is somebody will always say to us, "Thank you for doing this," because they don't feel that they could talk about their loved one with their family, like even their family who are going through the same thing as they are. A lot of times people in the same family still can't talk about their grief. And so it gives them a space to be able to just talk about their loved one, or they're mad, or they're angry, or they're sad, the gamut of emotions you're going to have. But it gives them a space to be.
Yeah. And the depths of this grief go deep in the feelings of guilt, but also the feelings of the unknown. Like, you don't know the real story of what your son was going through.
No, I don't.
And you never will.
No.
Yeah, and that's hard.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think part of what you're touching on is that helplessness, which is so hard.
Yeah.
And I think with, I have my brother's sister was in active addiction for 15 years. And what you're describing, kind of this, his family did such a tremendous job of saying, "We're here for you. We love you. We'll be here when you're ready to get help." And that was kind of it. And that, took a long time to land on. And still, she's been sober for 5 years. Thank God. Every phone call he gets, though, is the same. It's still there. And I just don't know how for us, we had to work really hard to compartmentalize our sister, this compassionate, loving mother, from her addiction. And it feels like we have to do that in life, and we have to do that after they're gone too. It feels like the stories of who these amazing people were feel more important than ever. Do you guys share stories about funny things or things that you loved about your loved ones in the group?
We do. It really, I think each group is different. Every meeting, so we meet the first Tuesday of the month at First Call at 9101 State Line Road from 6:30 to 8. And it really runs the gamut. There are some months where only one person shows up, and then there could be 10 people in the room. Yeah. Everybody's grief process is different, and there are lots of times where people just don't have it in them to come out and talk. And then other times we can be sitting there and people are just talking about, their loved one and what they, funny things or sad things or, just things that they really wish their families would be able to support them more because they're not talking about it.
Yeah.
So it does run the gamut. But I think also sometimes it takes people a really long time to get past the time before that you were living in that anticipatory grief and the trauma that you've gone through for whatever the amount of years that it was, getting to a point where you can have those funny, good thoughts and discussions. It took me a very long time to get to a point where I could talk about Josh and remember without the anger or the PTSD or the really sad or angry times that we had for all those years. And so it takes a while.
I'm sorry, and we don't have to go here if we don't.
That's all right.
Did you feel betrayed?
By Josh? No.
No.
He didn't want to be addicted.
Right.
Yeah. He did everything he could.
That's
and he was sober. Like he got sober for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then got a call and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It was that. Yeah.
That's how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just mentioned that just because I just was wondering. That I think that's a great answer, and that is probably an interesting aspect. A young person who has a parent who they lose to substance addiction, whether they drink themselves to death or they commit suicide or they find themselves, lose their liver because they've drank so much for so long. They can feel betrayed, and you'd have to make space for that at Grasp. But mostly, it's about this sense of powerlessness, this helplessness that you talked about, Laura, and the love that you have that is real. The meeting was last week. Was it? How many people? How'd we do?
Yeah.
Because more people need to know about this.
Thank you. We totally agree with you. There were 3 attendees, and they're 3 who've been coming a lot. Like they've been. One of the guys has actually been there since the beginning, so he's been with us now for like 3 years, and it is an amazing. It's amazing the difference the energy in the room is when, depending on who's in there. And the month before, it was totally different. We had 2 families who had come. It was their first time. One family had just lost their child in June.
Oh, wow.
And the other family had lost their son in October.
Yeah.
And then there was a woman that had lost a nephew just within weeks before the meeting.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of raw grief.
Yeah.
So you get to meet at First Call. Emily, you've embraced the opportunity. First Call has a program called How to Cope, which is for the active, the parent or
Yeah, we were talking about that a
one.
little before. And Dawn, you said you went through How to Cope.
My ex-husband and I did it probably about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, and it really was helpful.
Yeah.
The one thing the one little nugget that I got other nuggets, but it was you can't, and I always forget one of the C's. You can't cure it, you can't change it, you didn't cause it.
You can't control it.
That's exactly. Can't control it. We did a podcast. Maybe number 5 or 4 or 5. Anyway, you can go back and look. The How to Cope program, you said, doesn't quite touch some of the things, and maybe it can't. it is the language that you start to learn, and it opens the door to other, discoveries, right? But talk a little bit
I feel
about
like
how to cope.
where Laura started with stigma is like, first off, the one thing we can always do as an agency is, people impacted by addiction, which we all are, is just make space to talk about it. And we need to talk about it. We need to normalize it. That's, take the stigma out of the shadows. And I think First Call is a very effective narrator for that. And I think that starting the conversation, I think the thing that is powerful for how to cope in this space is it's really not about what your loved one is doing at all. And I think that is tremendously unique because so often families are only offered support if their loved one does. If my husband goes to treatment, then maybe I get some help. It's so contingent on behavior that you really don't have any control over. Whereas how to cope is, I have no control over what my loved one's doing, and it's impacting me in the meantime, and I need help. So, I think that applies here in some respect, but I do know, we see and hear from a lot of families, especially in recent years, who have lost a loved one to overdose, right? And while we'll say, we have these family services that can help you kind of make sense of what your role was and was not, it isn't built to speak to the grief. And I do think, that's the conversation we're having is there's expertise in that conversation. And so I think through this partnership, bringing GRASP is an important first step. It's so important for us when we hear from those families to be able to say, hey, this is a flyer for this group, to be able to offer those resources. But, we're wondering, are we doing enough? I sit on the Overdose Fatality Review Board for Kansas City, Missouri. And so every quarter we're meeting to go through cases of people who have died from overdose in the past year. And that involves a next of kin interview. And almost every time we're hearing from the family, I felt like I had no help. I had no resources. And so it's we're before and after, we need to be doing better. All of us need to be. So I'm so glad to be able to offer the after.
We're talking with Dawn Owen and Laura Bratt about GRASP, which is grief recovery after substance passing. And conventional grief circles can fall short of getting to the layered guilt, the stigma, complexity. First Call has stepped in. First Call offers wraparound services. Mm-hmm. That's I remember you like to say that. But this is, as you talked about it, I was just this is kind of could be the most critical piece to the puzzle of all of us dealing with me personally, my own addiction, and then how I think about my kids, my 3 kids that all could be wired for addiction. Addiction runs in your family. Addiction runs in your family. Addiction runs in your. We have all get touched by this, and to think that we don't have safe spaces to talk. To go this deep, we need to build this up. We need GRASP to be full. The room needs to be full. We all get touched by it. I was at a wedding this weekend, and I had a sister-in-law come and talk to me about her life, and it has struck her, and I never knew it. I was like, I can't believe this is who you are. We need more time together. Let's know this. It should be known. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. Let's talk about the process. Someone needs help. They find GRASP. They show up. What do they get?
Good question. We start every meeting. There's some very specific things that we go through that are part of the National Organization of GRASP. We share our individual stories. We ask anybody who's present if they'd like to share. And as Dawn was mentioning, some folks are not wanting to or able to. That's fine. Whoever does want to is able to. And then we generally have a topic that we share on. And sometimes we get to the topic. Sometimes we don't. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we get diverted from the topic. And then we have an enclosed space of an hour and a half. So sometimes there's some very intense things going on within the group, and we always say at the beginning of the group, if you need to go and we're still at it, feel free to leave. And sometimes if the group is naturally winding down, we wind down sooner. It's an opportunity for people to share, to cry, to sit quietly, to gain information.
With Al-Anon, I know they structure it around like an AA type of deal. Is there a first step to this?
No.
No.
No. And I have over 30 years in Al-Anon.
Sure.
So
Black belt.
I'm not quite sure if I would say that, but yeah. But that's part of my recovery.
Detach with love is kind of the theme of that, and
It is.
you kind of
It is.
I get it. My wife's had to practice that a little. So,
Do you feel like those grasp and Al-Anon work well together as someone? Do either of you have? I mean, obviously you go to Al-Anon personally and help facilitate grasp, but
So I believe there's synergy. I don't believe you need one to connect with the other. And it can be different. So in Al-Anon, you might be actively engaged in relationship with the addict alcoholic. In grasp, you have lost them.
yeah,
right.
And that is the singular requirement for grasp, is that you've lost somebody to addiction. And they are different.
yeah.
So they can synergize, and you can be members of both, and you can gain different things from each, but they are very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said.
All right. So, do you have some? There's you create a safe space. Someone comes in. There's an open share. After the open share, that could last. The open share could last the whole meeting, and then it consumes the topic. Is there a set of topics that you guys are creating? Do you guys get together and focus yourselves before? Do you pray before you get there? Is there a opening prayer, closing prayer? Do you have to believe in God? Any of that?
No. So Laura is a avid reader of meditation and meditation books and prayer books and things like that. And so
I don't find
she
that
will
surprising at all.
Yeah. And so I'll be at work and I'll get a text. How's this for a topic? And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. So she'll text me a topic, and so we'll go back the couple of days before we have our group. We'll go through her past texts and we'll say, okay, this one. You know what? Maybe not this one. Maybe the next one, because depending on the group, there are certain topics that are just too intense for people who are just new. And it's just too raw, and we just don't want to traumatize anybody coming in.
I get it.
And even if we chose that topic thinking it would work, if depending on what the makeup of the group is when we walk in, we'll change it. Just because we really are aware of the people who are in the room with us. Yeah. And regarding a prayer before or after, it's not a prayer. But GRASP has given us a kind of like a guidebook, some topics, how to reach out to the community, just kind of generic things to help us as facilitators. And they have a final. It's not a prayer. It's just a saying.
Sure.
That Laura says it at the end, so I don't remember it.
I actually thought I would bring it because I can't recall it in the moment.
Put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Sorry, me too.
But the very last line, which I so appreciate, says, "We are here." So full stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are here. Well,
I have a question before.
Yes, great.
Okay.
No, yeah.
I'm just curious about, you've referenced that GRASP is a model that essentially you're taking cues from. It's a national. Do you know how many other GRASP groups there are across the country? Like, or when the group started? Like, can you help give us some context about GRASP? Big GRASP.
We both have the flyer, the brochure with us. So we're like, okay, but you're having to.
I think the reason I'm asking is like we're all familiar with AA and Al-Anon and NA, but is this feels
right on cue,
similar,
Thank
right?
you.
Like
this is the pamphlet, and we did know that stuff once upon a time. I don't know that it doesn't.
We can follow up with that too.
I'm just looking in the
I
back.
can read you the paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah, read it. Love it.
Gary and Denise Cullen lost their only child, Jeff, to an overdose after many years of struggling with addiction, and through these experiences have a deep desire to ease the pain in any way for those left to cope with similar tragic deaths due to the illness of substance use disorder, addiction, or misuse of substances. In the same way that Pat and Russ Whitberger, the founders of GRASP, began this effort after their daughter Jenny's death from a heroin overdose, we intend to continue to work on behalf of Jenny and Jeff and so many, many others. Those were the families that initiated it. GRASP is a subsidiary of a 501c3 organization called Broken No More.
Okay.
So
There you go. Well, I just wanted to say if anybody out there wants to find out more about GRASP, they can go to the First Call website, firstcall.org/family services, right?
We are listed on the GRASP we are listed on the GRASP website, and we are listed on First Call. And I'm trying to remember exactly how to get there.
Okay.
But if it is listed, I think somewhere under services for First Call, it says GRASP.
And if you need them, they are there on Tuesday night, the first Tuesday of each month at 6:30.
We are.
And they begin to go down deep into this, and it would be really helpful for any of you that are suffering or struggling or trying to cope with what life is like. The constant thoughts that are pouring through your mind, and what you could have done, what should have been, what wasn't, and what you hoped for and what failed. That pain is almost indescribable, right, Dawn? Mm-hmm. Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to.
Okay. I kind of figured that.
Yeah. Here we go.
Yeah.
As we close things out, speak to those moms and dads and sons and daughters of loved ones that have lost. Tell them what you've experienced in hope and in what the idea of GRASP has brought to you as you've recovered from this, that something you'll never recover from.
I was about to say you don't recover. You just kind of learn to live with it better every day. I think for me, knowing that there are others, I started GRASP because Laura and I, because I wanted to be able to help other people. Being able to have people come together and knowing that we are giving them a safe space to be has helped me. Mm-hmm. It gets better. It doesn't go away. It gets better.
Right.
And it's not going to be tomorrow, and it might not be. It's not going to be the next day, but having the support of others in the community does help.
Yeah. I'm curious, Laura, like I recognize you have a different experience with addiction, but how has your participation with GRASP changed you, or what have you learned, or even your practice, with your clients?
I think it'd probably be fair to say it's changed everything.
Yeah.
Because the process that I had to go through to be willing to do this with Dawn was a huge healing process for me. And it was not fun. There's not a lot about this that's fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's funny times, but It's not fun. It's really hard. But healing is possible, and it makes everything easier. So I am very grateful to Dawn. I'm not sure if I really
And actually, I was just going to
ever
say
said
that back
to
to
you.
you.
Oh, I love that. Well, I was going to say how grateful I am that you both found each other, but also founded GRASP here in Kansas City, identifying a blind spot in the care of this, really critical situation, and I'm grateful for you, Emily.
Me too.
It's been really fun to be with you doing this, and I can't think of a better podcast to finish off our first season together. Having First Call in Kansas City, we are so lucky. So lucky for you.
Thank
and
you.
People don't know it, and it sometimes makes me mad that more people don't know it. So I didn't think I was going to get emotional, but I did. So
Yeah, these are the quiet parts like that no one wants to talk about. And so I'm so glad to be able to lift up GRASP and shout that from the rooftops, and we'll keep shouting First Call from the rooftops because
We do too.
yeah, it's not fun. But we have a team of amazing people who
You
have,
do.
like just like the two of you, we all have our reasons why we show up every day. And I think to do a hard job, you really have to know, why am I here? And I certainly know, and Bill, you know why you're here, and it's cool to get to know both of you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking for help. We want to continue this work. So if you're out there listening and you want to help us, please get in touch with First Call. They will gladly and gratefully accept any support that you can give us as we continue to do this work of telling the story of how important First Call is to Kansas City and how important organizations like GRASP are to the process of handling life with drugs, alcohol, and process addictions. We all face it. We're all connected to it. Not one person is free from it, and we all need to battle it. We live in a broken world.
And I think my last thought is, I think I'm proud of our community and our society. We're having these hard conversations out loud a lot more. We're talking a lot more about fentanyl and drug overdose and the impact of substance use, but we're not talking enough about what it leaves behind. So I promise that First Call will continue to think about what our role is, and thank you for bringing GRASP to Kansas City.
Thank you for
If you're
having
desperate
us.
for help, we call a hotline, right? We have a hotline for First Call.
Yep. Yeah, it's 816-361-5900, or you can go online to ask for help, firstcallkc.org.
Yeah, that's it. And as I said, as we live in a broken world, I invite each one of you to answer the call.